Hi, and welcome to another episode of About the Authors TV. I'm your host, Jake Brown. Over the past 40 years, the best-selling book series in the world, Chicken Soup for the Soul, with 500 million copies and counting, has entertained, inspired, and often healed readers with universally relatable messages woven through stories told by co-creators Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen. Mark's in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's best-selling author, and he joins us today for a career-spanning conversation. We're so excited to have you with us, Mr. Hansen. Thanks again for being here. Looking back today over the literal library of books in your catalog, it's over 300 and counting at this point. Am I math correct?
By the end of this year, it'll be 318 books, over 500 million sold. My goal, of course, is 1 billion, which I now look at all those guys who turned us down, 144 people that turned on Jack and Mark. And what I realized is if I'd been them reading this sheet that I wrote as a wow of a business plan, and I was a New York publisher, which I'm with now 7 publishers because I'm prolific, like I've said to you earlier. And I'm not bragging, that's the fact. I happen to love to read, I happen to love to think and write and speak. Those are and market. I'm pretty good at those 5 things, I guess. So it has been great for me, but it's even been greater for some of the people. I am excited to be the ambassador that is the gadfly that stabs people's spirits alive, makes them awake to their full possibilities and potential, because we all have infinite God in us potential, and I'm writing a book on just that right now. And most of us have underused it. We've lived below our privilege.
When you travel back in time to your own childhood, did you have an aspiration to ever write even one book? And who were you reading back then?
Okay, so first of all, my parents were Danish immigrants, so we didn't have a lot of books in the house. And that's why I was in remedial reading from 1st grade to 6th grade. And to become, according to Guinness Book of Records, world's best-selling author, that is quite a transformation. And I'll tell you what I think caused it. My parents were smart. They just didn't speak English. And back then there was no ESL, English as a second language. The one and only book that I remember as a little kid was, somehow it came into the house, The Little Engine That Could. I think I can. And then I'll say I did, which is, has been a profound effect on me, because my life has been that of a motivational speaker, not only here, but literally around the world. And now that Australia is caving in, they've hired me and paying me a fortune to go on Zoomcast to try to keep it bowed up. And as you know, I believe 100% in free enterprise. My parents had a little Danish bakery, but you don't make much on 5-cent rolls. It just isn't in the cards to do it. And I said, Dad, I don't know. I don't want the bakery. And maybe one of the brothers, I've got 3 brothers, maybe they do, but I'm a white glove guy. So, but then when I was in high school, this English teacher just mesmerized the audience. He was a thespian. He was a talker. He was a speaker. He taught debate. He also taught me how to fast type during one summer, which I think, I don't know where you grew up, but in Waukegan, Illinois, they expected me to be blue collar because I was big and strong, and I'd go work at John Mansville or something like that. So you would get caustic criticism for learning to type. You're taking summer school. What are you, an idiot?
What was that English teacher's name?
The teacher's name was John Reinhardt, and he would come in and he'd not only expect you to read everything, but he'd also expect you to watch. Back then it was Walter Cronkite, and the guy was just beyond amazing. So my parents were dead when I won the Book of the Year in front of 60,000 people in McCormick Place, and I called up Mr. and Ms. Reinhardt and I said, "Hey, John and Ellen, my parents aren't here. Can I honor you?" Because they want me to honor my parents. And I would like to honor you as my great and inspiring English teacher that really turned me on to reading. I mean, Mrs. Reinhardt said Johnny would have books everywhere. I mean, he really was a book advocate. He'd have them in the ceiling if they'd only stick. He was just, I couldn't admire him more. And every time I went home from college or whatever, I would go visit him. And he was always gracious and smart.
You majored in speech communication at Southern Illinois University, so it sounds like a clear indicator you already had your ambition in motion to head into public speaking, which is a really competitive field. Please talk about how that career track first evolved.
I went straight through student leadership and was really good. And then the president of the university liked my leadership, so he sent me to India for a year to study. But then I came back, and I'm going to get a doctorate in physiology, and the head of physiology was doing NASA at the same time, flying back and forth from Little Carbondale, Illinois down to Houston, and said, "You got to go hear the smartest guy on the planet." And I said, No, that's you, Dr. Alfred Richardson. I love Dr. Alfred Richardson. I mean, we befriended each other. I mean, for some reason, I've been really good at finding great, inspiring people to hang out with. And I went and heard Bucky Fuller talk, Einstein's best student. The guy did geodesic domes, Dymaxion cars, 15 doctorates at Harvard, 40 books. But Bucky said, we're going to talk about cosmogony, cosmology, epistemology, cartography, and synergetic energetic math. But that's 5 of 10 words he did, and I didn't know one of them. And you know the term sophomoric, I'm sure. I thought I knew everything. I had a 4 point by then. I thought, damn, I'm smart. Well, now I'm listening to somebody who's really smart. I go, so I begged to work for him, and I spent 7 years traveling around the world with Fuller. But SIU was great because 2 things. One is our campus had 64,000. Now that was the biggest in America at the time. Now today I live in Arizona. We got 2 with 120,000, 2 biggest in the world, right? ASU and GCU, both of which I do some stuff with, and friends with the president, of course, because I figure what the hell, you ought to stay that, although I don't agree with all their politics, but I agree otherwise. But SIU had this genius who hired everybody that got fired at Harvard, Wharton, Yale, and Stanford at 65 because they were 65. It was, today you and I call that ageism, but back in 1968, 9, and 70, that was just normal protocol. Just like you fire a pilot, hit 60 and it can no longer fly, which is, I'm a pilot, so that's not like a cool thing, right? I mean, I'm not a commercial pilot, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, what if I told you I'm sure you're over 30. What if I told you at 30 you could never drive a car again because you're 30? I mean, you'd be screwed. What am I going to do with my life?
As you traveled around the country with Fuller during those 7 years for that apprenticeship of sorts, what do you feel like you learned about public speaking that helped then get you onto the stage?
First of all, I tried to be Fuller, and I built the geodesic dome building business in New York and went bankrupt because you can't be somebody else. So, and then I thought my self-worth and net worth were the same, and that's not true. And I wanted to kill myself for a while because I thought I'd failed terribly myself in the people that I was helping, or thought I was helping. What Bucky really taught me, though, let's do it positively. First of all, he taught me comprehensivity. And he said, look, we got this little planet called Spaceship Earth, and he was working on a game which I helped with a lot called World Game. How do you make the world work for 100% of humanity, make us physically and economically successful? And that's the first time in history that anyone saw that. Now, remember, he was trained, he was born in 1895. By 1917, he's being trained to be an admiral in the American Navy by the British Navy, because remember, jet planes didn't start until 1959. So, you know, stuff that you and I look back and go, well, hell, he must not have been too smart. No, he was damn smart. But he was learning World War gaming, and he said, let's switch it to world peace gaming, and let's figure out how we can do it. We do have the technology we need now. And having made a lot of money, I own one of the big companies called Natural Power Concepts, where we got pop-up urban wind. The big windmills are wonderful, but they don't do it. They can't be used everywhere. My windmills pop up. Wind runs from 6 p.m. at night. So you have solar all day, so we're probably going to work with Elon Musk, but solar all day, and then at night they pop up. Wind is from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. You know, suddenly got a different thing. We got pulsating waves, so we can get the oceans are going to keep pulsating forever. And everybody thought they were one way, but the guy who invented all this stuff, John Petrie, who, you know, I'm the big investor and owner of the company basically, but they pulsate 7 ways. Anyhow, so Bucky taught me to start looking at stuff as just a guy in communication would not have thought of. But Bucky was, you know, a polymath, and he got me to be a polymath. Now, you and I could agree or disagree with my analysis of myself, but I would say I am.
Once you begin to step into your own spotlight as a speaker, what were some of the greatest challenges to getting to the place you eventually ascended within that world?
Tony Robbins and I both did the first 3 years in our thing. We were chatting one time on a seminar together. We're the only guys, I think, that have ever done 1,000 talks a year for the first 3 years, because I'm a workaholic. And remember, I'm bankrupt. So then I had 3 miracles happen all at once. I kept what we teach now in the Ask book is, you know, ask yourself, ask others, ask God. And the ask God, I didn't understand how to do it like I formalized it now, but basically, God, come on, tell me what I'm supposed to do here. Otherwise, I'm going to kill myself because this isn't working. And I'm unloading toilet paper off a railroad car for $2.14 an hour, and this sucks. And it sort of came through. It's called intuition, but it's really God talking to us, right? That still inner voice, and said, talk to people that care about things that matter, that would make a life transformative difference for them. But wow. Okay, I know the law. I'll write it down. I wrote it down. Next morning, I go to, that's miracle number 1. Miracle number 2, I go to my 3 roommates in Hicksville, Long Island, New York, and I say, hey, guys, Any of you know anybody young speaking? It's not a lawyer, doctor, Broadway star, celebrity, or cotton top. Me, I want to relate to him as a young person. And he said, yeah, this guy's a few years older than you. He was a top salesman at Kodak, and now he's out training all of us. And the interest rates were 28%. They're off the Richter scale because of the oil embargo. And this guy is taking a down audience, and I get there in time to see him start, and he takes an audience that's dead. I mean, you know, and he made him so alive and vibrant. In 3 hours, he mesmerized him. Chip Collins, he later became my great friend. But so the second miracle is I get the ticket. Third miracle, I go up to him and I say, hey, I'd like to ask you about how to do this. He said, look, kid, chance you making it is 1 in 1,000. You ain't going to make it. So go do some real business. I said, no, I'm asking you to lunch. I'll buy the lunch. And let me ask the questions, if you would, please. I'm going to take copious notes. I'm a really good note taker and keeper of notes. I got 56 years of diaries, which people go, my wife said, why don't we get rid of them? I said, I still use them. I look back at them because my mind is really good backwards and forwards. Bucky taught me you can't go forward until you know what you've done backwards. So Chip tells me how to do it, but he says, stay out of real estate. I own this 5 boroughs. You do life insurance. I go, oh, I don't own any life insurance. At the time, I didn't know what a premium was or a CLU, Charter Life Underwriter, which is a joke is cunning, lonely, and unhappy. Anyhow, and then he and I met once a week when he came back from vacation. He said, you're not going to be here when I get back 2 weeks from vacation. By the way, I leave tomorrow. I'll never see you again. And I said, you will see me again. Anyhow, he came back and I had more talks booked than he did because I was out selling. I mean, there's nothing else to do except, and my dad said, you never ever go on welfare. You're done for. The government will own you because it's a way to rob. He didn't know what it meant. Today, I'd say it robs you of your self-esteem, your self-image, your wherewithal to be who you can be, do what you can do, and have what you can have. But Dad couldn't have articulated that, but he intuitively knew you always work and you earn your way forward. Third miracle is that Chip told me exactly what to do, who to do it with. In Manhattan, you got 18 million. In Long Island, depends on whose numbers you believe, 3 or 4 million. So, you know, we really literally started in Nassau, and Chip said, you know, if you call on 10 a day, one will say yes. Well, it's now 6:30 at night, and I'm calling this last guy who was with Metropolitan, and I didn't know how big they were at the time, but the guy was as big as my desk. I mean, he weighed 450 pounds if he weighed an ounce. He was, you know, back then, he was big and he was a little gruff, but he really liked me for some reason because he said, hey, Mark, my name's Tony, so I want you to know I'm the #1 guy in the #1 country in the world in insurance, and here's the directory to all the other guys. You just tell them Big Tony told you to call. Well, hell, that was a golden ticket, man. I now had the directory to everybody and met in, I'm maybe overdoing this for you, but Nassau and then Suffolk and then Manhattan and then New Jersey. And then, you know, I ultimately, they all, you know, if Tony's doing it and he's #1 and keeps hiring Mark, and we became great friends. And by the way, when I went in, can I go one step further?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Because you asked about possibility earlier. So remember, I'm a scared kid, and Chip's gone now, and I'm delivering talks, and I don't. Yes, I'd studied it, but I hadn't studied it to be a trainer. Like I was suddenly a trainer. I was watching the great and inspiring. So what I did, the first talk at his office was I brought in 10 books that I thought you ought to read, self-help action books, Think and Grow Rich, Magic of Believing, and I went through them. And Og Mandino, the greatest salesman in the world, scared, right? Wondering whether, is that going to work? Because Chip said, talk about prospecting, presenting, good habits, and closing, all of which I learned over a quick time, and did really, I think, pretty solid talks. I could tell you, well, they turned into books, so I guess they did, because I'm a good storyteller, which is what caused us to do the first book called Stand Up, Speak Out, and Win, which I sold 20,000 copies of to little audiences of 8 or 10 people at a time. At $10 each, I made 200 grand that first year, and I thought, damn, I'm smart. Again, except this time I'm not going down. The only mistake I made is I should have done a lot more books earlier. So Chip was just tremendously helpful. And then once he got back and was blown away that I was pulling it off after hundreds of people evidently had come to him. And
take viewers back, if you would, to the fated moment when you and Dr. Jack Canfield's stars first crossed each other's skies. It's important to note you were both names in your respective fields well before Chicken Soup for the Soul was first conceived.
So we're both talking at the Mandala Foundation in San Diego, and a lovely, lovely guy who's gone now, I'm sure, but was running it. And we had 6,000 people. That's a big audience for anyone. And Jack was somewhere in the front, Now, I'd seen Jack's book. He had the book that sold 370 million copies. Sorry, can't. 370,000 copies called 101 Ways to Build Self-Esteem in a Classroom. So I knew who Dr. Canfield was. Anyhow, so I'm the tie-up speaker, and I've sold all kinds of stuff. I mean, when you got that many audience, stuff blows. And Jack was standing there, and I sort of saw him, but I couldn't do anything. And then it was probably 6:30 or 7 at night, and he walks up to me while I'm shuffling the slides and putting away the stuff, and he says, do you know me? And I said, yeah, you're Dr. Jack Canfield. And I went through his Vita, and he said, boy, I'm damn impressed. I said, I'm impressed. He said, you want to go to dinner? I said, yeah, I don't want to get in traffic from San Diego back to Newport Beach. I lived in Newport Beach, and he lived then he lived in Culver City. He said, yeah. So anyhow, he said, man, and at the time he was earning like his business has always been teaching teachers, and mine was always business. First insurance, then real estate, then business, then Fortune 500 companies, then big churches, mega churches. If I'm going to go big. Anyhow, so we had a Vulcan mind meld. Now he was married to a doctor at that juncture. And I told him, he said, I want to make $1 million a year like you do. I said, well, I want to help you. So we wrote out his goals, and he put them on the ceiling over his bed. And I guarantee you his doctor wife was not only critical of Jack, saying, you don't really believe that horse shit that Mark's telling you, do you? That you put your goals up, you visualize on the ceiling, and you'll figure out your mind will go to work. And he said, well, he quoted the Bible, and he said, Romans 11:33 says, God in used ways are past finding out. Because I'm good at Bible. I would have been a great theologue if I didn't do this. Right? I would have a mega church.
At that first dinner, were you already discussing the concept for what would become Chicken Soup for the Soul?
No. What happened is he wanted me to teach him how to do stories, because he didn't know how to do a heart-touching, soul-penetrating story, my line. And he saw me rip hearts out of the people. First of all, I do a lot of humor, and he wasn't doing humor at the time, and he wasn't doing stories. So it was probably 6 or 8 weeks in that he came to me and he said, here's the 63 stories. I'm going to put this book together. And he had a title like, I'm not allowed to tell you, but it was atrocious. I've won, according to Guinness Book of Records, I'm the best guy at titles nowadays. Anyhow, so I said, Jack, those are all my stories. 100% of them, if we're going to do it, you got to do it with me. They said, okay, well, what do you want? I said, well, we'll do 50-50. And we never signed a contract, but we did it and built an empire. But it was, he's the inside guy. There's nobody better. I mean, Jack was the Latin scholar in West Virginia. He got into Harvard because they got to take 2 from every state. He was the smartest kid. And his old man was smart too. I met him a couple of times.
Wow, that is fast. So you two, in effect, were still getting to know each other while you were writing this book. Take fans back to the moment when you came up with the brilliant signature title for the series.
I found the title he came up with. I'm going to use a big word, despicable. I'm going to do a nice word, but I expect I didn't say that to him. And I said, Jack, man, now I teach in like this book, that you start with the title. Everyone writes a book and then spends 10 minutes on the title rather than 10 hours on the title. And it takes longer than that to write a book. But I don't care who you are. There's nobody that, unless you've got a ghost doing every word of it, like the president of the United States or something, maybe does. So we decided to do it, and we went into our respective things, like what we teach, and asked, mega best-selling title, mega best-selling title, mega best-selling title. It's called a thought command in psychiatry. It's what Napoleon Hill, I said, Jack, Napoleon Hill came up with the first title of Think and Grow Rich. Do you know what the title was? Originally, it was How to Make a Boodle with Your Noodle. Yeah, exactly. You'd throw up, and the publisher said, look, Knapp, that was a nickname, Dr. Hill. Knapp, if you don't come up with a better title, I'm going to publish it tomorrow, but I don't know if it'll make it. So Knapp went to saying, I need a best-selling title. God, give me a best-selling title, best-selling title. So I just modified that to mega best-selling title, mega best-selling title, mega best-selling title. Jack calls me at 2:58 in the morning. This was before cell phones. And says, Chicken Soup. I said, for the soul. And we had it. We both got goosebumps. Now, the publishers didn't get it. And he said, what do you think? And it woke up the whole house, and we got dogs, and I had a daughter becoming a vet, and we had 80 animals on an acre. This is not what you want to do at 2 o'clock in the morning, wake up every animal. Anyhow, I said, wow, look, I think it's right. And he said, why? I said, look, I think the soul of America is in trouble, Jack. And he said, man, you just nailed that, mother. Now, what we didn't know is that the soul of the world is in trouble because we sold 374 million books in China.
That follow were definitely staggering, starting with the very first Chicken Soup for the Soul book. What do you feel within the recipe you two concocted made it connect so successfully with readers?
Publisher said, you're going to be a one-hit wonder, the health communications. And then I made him worth $2 billion. So I think, and he didn't pay us, and we had to sue him to get paid even. So, you know, I'd read all the books on it, and it was sort of like it's a hoard's business is what they said. Anyhow, we came through. Jack had a big office in Culver that he was doing his self-esteem stuff out of. And we either met there or in my offices. I had big offices in Costa Mesa next to Newport Beach. And what we did is we had like 7 zones in the book. This isn't the book, but you had love, and you had self-esteem, and you had faith, and you had whatever it was dedicated to. You had special moments, overcoming obstacles, aging, and higher wisdom, generations, and then consider this. Ronald Reagan went to be the actor to be presidential, and Louis B. Mayer said, he just doesn't look presidential. Just the greatest stuff that we found. And we're both good researchers, and we're both omnivorously read. We both have 50,000 books, and I've had people say, you don't really, you come in my office and you count every one of them, they're more than that. And they're stacked over there because I haven't had time to put them on the shelf because I've got 4 books under tow writing, because I say never write one book, write 3 or 4 at the same time. Anyhow, so what Jack and I did is we would go through the stories, make it would work. And then we did stickies on the wall and kept shuffling it until we thought it was perfect. And then we tested it. Like once we had the one-hit wonder, we had 2 or 3 books under tow because the publisher said, holy cow. Because I wrote all the goals, right? I said we'd sell 1.5 million in a year and a half. We sold 1.3 million. Then I said we'd sell 5 million, and we sold 5 million. Then I said we'll sell 10, and we sold 10. Then I said we'll sell 15, and for years we sold 15 a year, 15 million books a year. Damn impressive. One of the Guinness Book of Records right here is behind me is we had 15 of the top 50 books, and Maya Angelou we were filming in the same place she was, so she came to our room, and she is a lovely, lovely lady. I mean, she's Oprah's coach, as you know, and all that when she was alive. And she comes in and says, boys, I want you on my PBS show. We said, well, you got to wait until lunchtime, and then we'll skip lunch. We'll just go over and do your show with you. Anything for, I mean, she couldn't have been more gracious. On the show, she says, you guys are hogging the list.
Within 101 wonderful stories told in this book, first, why did that magic number make sense?
I came up with a bunch of the model. I'm more the strategist, having been with Bucky, and said, look, I got a degree in synergetic energetic geometry, Jack. I think we got to do 101. It's the right Fibonacci number. I think we should do 3 pages or less. People need to go in and out of a book fast. And the trouble is, a novel, you can do 10 or 20 pages and people fall asleep reading it. But this is going to be a self-help action storybook that touches the heart. So it's tough to keep it down to that, but we monitored it.
The follow-up pressure must have been enormous after the runaway success of that first book. How did you and Dr. Canfield decide what market to target with the second one?
The next book was going to be Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul. And by that time, Time Warner's trying to buy us, and Larry Kirschbaum and I became great friends. Jack didn't really meet these people except perfunctorily because I'm the business guy. And Larry and I just hit it off. We were in Germany together. We were here in New York together. Our publisher thought he owned it. And that's why we had to sue him, because Jack and I own, thank God I paid for the trademark myself. I paid $1,500 for getting us trademarked. And the court, I went with us because I said, this is it. And we also did the design dress. He said he did it. I paid for that too.
Well, that's a great cautionary note for aspiring writers who have a great idea for a series. Trademark it before you place it with a publisher. Once that was sorted out legally and you were on to the next few sequels in the series, which include a second helping, a third serving, a fourth course, a fifth portion, and a sixth bowl of Chicken Soup for the Soul, respectively. As you saw readers coming out as well in person to see you two in such mass crowds, you must have really known you were onto something truly special and became such an overnight phenomenon.
Our audiences just went crazy. The amount of people that would show up, and who showed up was amazing to us. I mean, Jack and I were still doing all the seminars together, and suddenly we'd have 15,000 people show up, and you go, holy gosh. But you'd have psychiatrists in the front row saying, hey, look, this guy's going to the big house, and I've been trained to ask questions like, why did you kill your mother? Why did you stab that girl? and they don't work. But the minute we have the kid read, I wish I had a brother like that, their heart opens up and they start telling the story. They said, so you guys have hit a chord that nothing, and by the way, I've still got lots of great psychiatrist friends. Of all the medical doctors, I got to say, I got more of them than any other kind of friends in the world, literally in the world. Anyhow, but back to what happened is Larry Kirschbaum introduced me to his daughter who runs Nickelodeon. And Jack and I had 250 stories we thought were a 10 for the teenage soul. And this is what we did. We said, feedback's breakfast of champions. We said, hey, wow, this is cool. We took our names off all the stories, and I'm more the prime writer, and Jack just is the prime editor. And story finder. And then what happened is we took Irma Bombeck off, or Art Buchwald, or anyone's names off, and tested on 12,000 kids. Now remember, this is front-ended computer, and all these kids were the smartest kids in Nickelodeon getting slimed. And I took my daughters up there to get slimed, and they thought, oh, hell, Nickelodeon thinks you're so good, Dad. Watch this. And they slimed the old man, which I didn't bring clothes for that game. Just before that, my daughter was, I guess, 6, and she'd sit in my lap when I was doing all these telephone interviews, which were so much better than having to slug around like Wayne Dyer and I did to every radio station in the beginning. But the radio interviews, and she'd tell the story. So we're on at Nickelodeon. I'm not finishing this story very well. I got 2 stories at once here, but and the guy says, Melanie, you just did a great job of that story. You got 2 million kids out there listening. Melanie immediately froze up when she was just talking to this guy and Dad, no sweat, but all of a sudden she took 2 million, because she thought she was important. So anyhow, Nickelodeon did the test with 12,000 kids and said all these stories, we rated them on a scale of 1 to 10. And if the story was a story you could repeat immediately after you read it, a 10 plus, plus, plus. Well, hell, we had 101 10 plus, 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 and the book sold 19 million the first year. I mean, it was just off the Richter scale. Nobody had ever done that. And now suddenly our publisher wants to go from 1 book a year, because he was doing 1 book every 2 years, which is, by the way, that was the model of that time. So I'm not faulting him. But then, he suddenly wanted to do 4 books a year. And I said, look, there's some limit to, I'm in charge of publicity here. I don't care how good I am. I can't get to enough people fast enough, even though I created bypass marketing, where we were on 50 million Diet Coke cases a month, or 600 million Campbell soup cans.
Wow, tell viewers more about how that rollout worked. It helps explain why the series became a household name brand so quickly.
Okay, so what I teach everybody, that if you're gonna, and by the way, I do have a course on how to do all that and find those people. I go to HansenInstitute.com, because I want everyone to write a book, and I'm innocent on that, and I want everyone to write their autobiography too, so the family, wouldn't you like to know what your great-great-grandparents said, thought, felt, and did? I mean, we're doing a really cool project on that right now. I wrote a book, Speed Write Your Autobiography, so it comes out shortly. So it's really, just because, hell, I don't know what my great-grandparents did. They're invisible to my brothers and myself.
And it's more popular than ever with the DNA stuff now, where you can do these whole tests of your, ancestors and all that. You're right. It would be great to watch it.
So you can know where, and by the way, we paid for that both ways. There's 2 of them, 99, and the other one is Ancestry.com. The head of Ancestry.com is how I melted on Amazon as a bypass market. But I'll go back to the first one. So get with Coca-Cola. And we did a test first, because I said, you ought to test everything. And I said, what do you want to know? I said, do Coke readers drink, or do Coke readers or Diet Coke readers read books? Turns out that Coca-Cola readers don't read books, by and large. Diet Coke readers are all great omnivorous readers. So I said, well, and by the way, it may have been a mistake on my part, but I remember I'm making that part of the decision. So I made the decision. It turned out to be magnificent, because we were on 50 million Diet Coke cases with Chicken Soup for the Romantic Soul next to Nora Roberts' book, Hidden Riches, and then they invited us to New York because we got enough money raised. It's called Cause-Related Charity, that we got 15,000, 15, and 30 kids into Boys and Girls Clubs. And it was not, we were number 1 for 58 weeks for that. It was just a mind blower. I mean, and Coca-Cola was celebrating us and all that. I'm not happy with them this week of what they're doing in Atlanta, but that's a whole issue, different issue. I was dealing with a whole different leadership, and the leaders all celebrated us, and they're in New York, and they're taking Nora and I out to, and we just had a great time. I mean, because they said, we've never seen anything work like this. I said, well, let's do it again. They said, well, you know, we'll do it again later. And then they changed leadership, and that's too bad because I wanted to do it again.
With demand so high, when you look back on now the library of titles that came out of your and Dr. Canfield's heads over the course of the 90s, there's Chicken Soup for the Little Soul Reader, Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul. Really, there were books that appealed to everybody. Cat and dog lovers, couples with children with special needs, mothers, daughters, and sons, the Christian family, the caregiver, the entrepreneur. The best-selling list goes on and on. Any personal favorites that made the biggest audience penetration?
Jack and I championed different books, right? And we did the Teenage Soul, and then we're doing all the universities. Like I had 20,000 leaders come to Ball State University, and the president of the university takes me to dinner. First of all, the girls that picked me up, they said, Omar, we wouldn't have made it if it weren't for you. We were going to go home. We were so sad and lonely. We missed our parents. But your book gave us a reason to talk to each other by reading these stories. So, but 20,000 student leaders, and I got to do two things to you, Jake. First of all, the president says to me that night, he says, hey, Mark, there's a real tragedy in universities. I said, right now, I think there's another tragedy, but the tragedy back then was only 1 in 10 that matriculate graduate. I said, man, I had to pay my own way through school. And I went through undergraduate school in 3 years with, you know, sort of a double major in terms of hours, again, because I was so eager to get education, be the first in my family to graduate college and all that crap. So I said, I will do a Chicken Soup for the College Soul. And we just got it out to 16 million kids. So that was just, that. Now, wind way forward, one of my students has got 4 degrees from UCLA, and now he's a medical doctor from Stanford and head of Stanford Research Innovation, a lovely guy. His mommy and I are good friends too, Trudy Green, and his name is Dr. Ben Rolnick. So Ben calls up and says, hey, Mark, I wanted him to work for us. I didn't want him to go to medical school. I said, Ben, you know, I got a lot of employees, 387, I'd like you, 67, I'd like you to be working with us. And he came down and he said, I'll help you, but I think, you know, you taught me I got to use my potential. My potential should be in innovative medicine. I said, okay, Ben, if that's what it is, that's what it is. And he's doing a great job, by the way. He's really a brilliant kid. But he says, you got to get with this kid from Stanford that is really, you changed his life back at Ball State University. And I go, remember, there are 20,000 kids. I didn't meet them all. I didn't shake hands. I took a few pictures, maybe 100 or something, but hell, I don't know who's in the room. So this kid hears me talk, named Chris Pan from China, speaks English and Chinese. He's the third hire at a little company you've heard of called Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg, at the level that Mark is brilliant, he had Chris Pan teach him Chinese for a half hour every morning from 6 to 6:30, because he saw, this is a market with, they lie about their numbers. There's over 2 billion people in China. You can't have 5 cities over 100 million without having a big ass population. Now, a lot of them are dead because of COVID, but that's not the issue. The issue is it's a gigantic population with 11, I know too much about China to do it, but, anyhow, so Zuckerberg ended up learning Chinese and marrying a Chinese girl. That his wife is a Chinese, you know, pediatrician, OBGYN, in case you didn't know. Anyhow, but this kid made his fortune. And so Ben says, Chris would like to come down and meet with you and just thank you. And Crystal, my wife, if you'd be open to it. I said, how am I going to say no to that? And he said, you are so dynamic, so inspirational. You open up such possibilities that I decided I had to learn how to speak. I had to learn how to, I was already a student leader. I was student body president of my high school. He said, I went through it. And then because I had all those skills, I could talk Mark Zuckerberg into hiring me, because you told me to learn debate. You told me to learn persuasion. You told me to learn to be articulate and then open up all of China for him, which I've done. And he said, none of that would have happened if I hadn't been a student leader and come and heard you at Ball State University. And I went, oh my gosh. I asked him to do a video testimonial. He's never done it, but because he's taking a lot of credit now for it, because he looks really smart, and he is. But I went, wow, that's cool. And so you never know how much an effect you'll have, just like you never know the people that we get letters every day from people that don't commit suicide because they're reading our book, Ask, because the COVID has confined them and they've been shut down. Now suddenly they're asking questions to their spouse or mastermind partner or business partner or church or temple partner.
Chicken Soup for the Soul took the millennium by storm, climbing into the hundreds of millions of copies sold around the world, eventually becoming the best-selling paperback series of all time, according to the Guinness Book of World Records by the time you sold the franchise in 2008. What aspects of the global success most amazed you?
I was a student in India, so I pay attention to India. I pay attention to China. I pay attention to Australia, even though it's a relatively little country with only 26 million. And, but it's a country that I do so much work in because the Aussies and I have fallen in love with each other, and they have me on their media trying to bail them out. And I'm saying everybody's got to be an entrepreneur now, because you can't go from Sydney to Melbourne, if that means anything to you. So we sold like tens of millions in Australia. We've sold 374 million, like I said, in China is the last number I got. And we've sold probably 50 million in India. And the only reason is that India, while England said they taught everyone English, don't buy it. There's 647 languages in India. I can name languages, no offense intended, Jake, have you been to India yet? Have you ever heard of the language Kannadese or Telugu, right? I mean, you've heard of Hindi Urdu, and you assume everybody speaks Hindi Urdu, right? Well, I can tell you, because I'm one of the few people myself, the guy I traveled with to India, because he was student ambassador from Amherst, and I was student ambassador from SIU at the time. And we are still best friends 50 years later. He owns 7 houses around the world, done exceedingly well. But he and I, when we finished the tour, we said, we may not make it back here right away. Let's do a big diamond. Now, our parents were flipped. You guys are going to go to Bangalore and Madras and Calcutta and New Delhi and Srinagar. We went to places that, most Americans can't even pronounce the name. And we started out in Mysore State, and we started out the Harvard of India in a place called Levant College, which is, it was wonderful. Interesting thing about the internet was that suddenly Jack and I were getting people sending us our stories back without our name on it. I mean, stories that literally Jack and Mark wrote. Like Jack wrote, I'll give Jack credit on this one, The Golden Buddha. I had nothing to do with it. My name's not on it. And it would come back and say, you ought to put this in the book because it's so good. It's Jack's story. Jack and his wife saw the Golden Buddha, which it's a long story, but the bottom line is that this Golden Buddha was when the marauders were coming in, they put concrete around it, and all of a sudden there's an earthquake and it broke the concrete, and the head monk looked, oh my God, there's gold inside. There's gold inside. And, what we're saying is there's gold inside each and every one of us. I could not be happier that I'm part of something that's big. And
well, there's at least a decent chance, because those books are sold everywhere, well beyond the usual bookstore borders. What about some of the places you're proudest to have seen the brand sold over the years?
Yeah, and strange places. Like I'm the one who got it into dollar stores, Dollar General. There's 4 dollar stores. I can't think of all their names. Dollar General, Dollar Tree. Anyhow, and I had other authors coming up to me that are really famous, that are going to go unnamed right now, who I love and respect. I love all authors, good or bad, but there's a lot that I'm addicted to. I read everything he or she writes, but they would say, you're whoring our business. I go, what? They said, you're selling books for $1 at the dollar store. I said, I do 3 stories out of a chicken soup book at a dollar store. And the people, my opinion, and we sell 15 million a year and get 15%. I said, my opinion is as follows. The person at the dollar store, if you look at those people without teeth and are eating Twinkies and think that's a nutrition, are probably not ever going to darken the door of Barnes & Noble or Books A Million or Hudson, or probably be in an airport ever. And they go, I never thought of that. I said, well, if you were a good marketer, maybe you ought to try to go into dollar store. You see how hard it is, and then you'll change your mind. I love the dollar store. I think it does a really good thing for this bottom of the market. And why shouldn't somebody at the bottom be able to buy a $1 book? I am 100% for it.
You and Jack continued to collaborate together after the 18-year run writing Chicken Soup for the Soul on other bestsellers like The Power of Focus, The Aladdin Factor, and Dare to Win. What did you enjoy about writing together as that success continued?
So what happened is that once 144 publishers turned us down, our agent fired us, but he had taken us to New York, and I had written a book called Dare to Win, right? Somewhere I have it here. See The Power of Focus. I had Dare to Win out yesterday somewhere, didn't I? I don't know where it is. I see Aladdin Factor. Anyhow, Dare to Win, and we took it to Berkeley, and Berkeley said, hey, look, we'll take it, but you, Mark, wrote your thing that you like to do prequels and sequels, because I just read the book by Lucas that said, you ought to do Star Wars 415, right? And Roddenberry are my heroes. So, we're going to do Dare to Win, Dare to Lose, all the way to Dare to, 14 with Berkeley. Well, we did. I had written Dare to Win and sold 360,000 copies from the platform. the lady said, well, Jack's got to put his name on it. So he did a little perfunctory fluff and put a few things in, and then we did it and sold a hell of a lot of them. And then the next one was going to be Dare to Ask, which that's what became Aladdin Factor. And she called up, this woman called up and said, by the way, if you guys don't have it done in 2 months, I'm going to sue you to oblivion. And like, we were the number 1 and 2 book in America at the time. And I go into Jack and I said, this decision, I come into Jack's office and I say, hey, we're getting sued by, we just made millions of dollars and now somebody was suing us at Berkeley. He says, well, his exact line, which, you know, when you're in the yogurt's hitting the fan of your life, you remember the lines, not because you want to, just because you're in pain and somebody's trying to hurt you and take your wallet, right? He said, what are you going to do about it? I said, Jack, they're suing Mark and Jack. They're not suing Mark. They're suing Mark and Jack. I don't think you quite understand the gravity of the situation. Anyhow, I said, I'll do this. I will interview the 101 best askers in the world that are all our friends because we've traveled everywhere. And we interviewed them and they're in the book and we just put it together. And it was monumentally interesting to me because first of all, I teach in oh, here it is. Hot damn, there it is. This is my original Dare to Win, which I thought 360. Isn't that a pretty cover? I mean, you can't miss that cover from the already, you know, because I teach you got to do good covers. But the second chapter on this is everybody can make a fortune by doing interviews. You have a book in you, right? Which has got a new cover out now coming in flaming red. I can show it to you when we're done if you want. Anyhow, so I interviewed all those people. Then we went to Jack's office and we put it together and did a couple of transition things like the Aladdin thing from 101 Aladdin Nights. I read it and I thought, wow, wouldn't that be cool to weave this mother through? And it really worked. I think we sold, the number I'm remembering is 3.6 million, and maybe 3.8 or maybe 3.4, but it's 3 point something.
You've long been a master of the title throughout your entire career. For the aspiring author, what is key to honing the perfect title?
There's 8 things that make a good title, but I mean, Chicken Soup is a colloquial title is what we call it because it is what grandma or mom gave you when you were sick to get well. And we thought, like I said, the nation of America, the soul was hurting and we had no idea how pained it was.
Wow, those numbers are staggering, book in and out. It must make you shake your own head sometimes. The 1 Minute Millionaire was another franchise you launched, this time with Robert G. Allen. Tell us what made you two work as co-writers in that series.
That's a book I want to tell you about. That's this. So, remember, I was living in Newport Beach. I never got invited to a Hollywood party, so I said, well, hell with it. It's on my birthday, I'm going to have a big Hollywood party on my 40th birthday. So I'll pay for the Shirelles to come out. I mean, I didn't know what they cost, but they cost $5,000. I can tell you that now. But today, that doesn't look bad to me. If you're broke, it looks $5,000. Holy cow! But the Shirelles came out, and I had 500 people come. I invited everybody from Century 21, everybody I worked for, Metropolitan. If you ever hired me, you and the people's names I had on my list got invited. And the Shirelles were so excited to get hired again because they weren't doing a lot of work. You know that business, and it is either up or you're down. You either got a hit wonder or you're a memory, right? Absolutely. And so they brought as a gift to me for my birthday the Temptations. So, I mean, that's pretty damn cool. Isn't that cool?
Very cool.
The audience thought I knew the Temptations and the Shirelles. And we danced all night afterwards until 2 or 3 in the morning. But, you know, because I'm colorblind, so I don't have any issues. But Bobby was one of my friends forever. And he'd sold 20, ultimately he sold 50 million copies and nothing down because of all the other stuff he's done and I've done. And now he is unequivocally the most famous guy. He's living in China and doing really well, unless he's moved back. And he may be wise enough to have moved out, given some of the silliness going on there. I haven't talked to him in a couple months, but up to a couple months ago, he was still living in China. And I think that's probably not a good idea for an American this time of year, just time in life. Anyhow, so Bob said, I want to do this book and I want you to write the foreword. I said, you're at my party, but hell yeah, I want to know how to make $1 million in a minute. So the next day I'm flying out to Vancouver and he's sitting in first class with me. I said, what are you doing? He said, ask your secretary, where's the furthest you're flying? And then I'm going to buy the first class seat next to you. I said, why are you doing that? All you want me to do is the forward. He said, no, I want you to write the book with me. And see, I was already more famous than he was, publicly more famous. In real estate, my fame doesn't touch his. But, and he was brilliant. He owned the Jazz at this time. He owned Downtown. Salt Lake. I mean, he was really smoking, and we just really got along. So I said, you know, I do three things in a book. I won't write anything that's not unique. I won't do anything that's not transformational to the reader, and I won't do anything that's not inevitable. That Jake reads it, likes it so much, he's going to tell his wife, you know, you ought to read this, or husband or brother or sister or somebody. So this book is two books in one. The left-hand side is your left brain. The right-hand side is a story, which we just today had somebody want to make a movie 20 years after we did it. And then Bob, being a good Mormon, knew Paul Allen, not Bill Gates' Paul Allen, but Paul Allen had ancestry. And obviously we skied together, played together. He's got a new company now, but in this before Spam. So we said, hey, we want to sell more books than ever. And Bob and I are at his house and we're watching, and Jeff Bezos says, I own Amazon and nobody could sell more books than I can deliver. Now, that at every level, that's not true. And I can tell you why, the deep stuff, because I've had to study it. But Bob had just written a book called Challenge, where it said, send me to an airport, take away my wallet, and give me $100, I'll buy $1 million worth of real estate. Well, Bobby left $100 on the counter at the airport and still bought $1 million worth of real estate with the cameras on them. And then send me down the unemployment line and give me, I'll get everybody to make $5,000 a month and never dirty the door of an unemployment line again, or I'll pay them $5,000 a month. Pretty bodacious. So I said, Bobby, what do you think? He said, man, I just think Jeff just challenged you and I. I said, that's what I thought you'd say. So let's melt his ass. He said, how are we going to do that? I said, I don't know. And then we're sitting with Paul Allen. I said, look, you got 3 million people in Ancestry. We both sent our, whatever it was, $100, $96. I said, so I like it, but you got this big list. We'll send everybody out a copy of this. This is a universal symbol of freedom, and it's the only book ever that has got an inside purple, as far as I know. And I made it so the butterfly flies off before you fly to freedom by the time you're done with the book. And a lot of people made millions on it. The first line what I wrote was, I want to create 1 million millionaires. That's $1 trillion. And I want to, there's one right, perfect, easy, acceptable way for everyone to make 1 million. So I said, Bob, let's work with Paul and we'll mail out, and you give $250 of your electronic stuff. We're the first guys doing this. And I'll give $250 my electronic stuff. I did Strangest Secret. I updated Earl Nightingale's Most Led tape, and it 100 million people listen to him and 100 million listen to me. So, and it advertised all of our stuff, and it worked. But we got to do it all on, so it came out October 17th, 2001. Now remember, this is after 9/11, so it's like the crap time ever to sell books. But all these people said, yeah, these guys are going to melt down Amazon, so we're going to get by just for the hell of it. Until this second, I never realized somebody having fun hacking, but that's equivalent of hacking. I can see it now. I didn't see it until this second because I'm hacked. I feel pissed. But the point is, they used to open up at 6 a.m. and go to 11 and then close. I don't know if you're old enough to remember that or not, but at 6 a.m. we looked at the thing. We're at Bob's house. I slept over, and we were at 79,000. And by 10 o'clock, 10:30, I think it was 702. At which time Amazon went, well, 3 hours later, Bezos, I don't know how the hell he got my cell phone number, but got my cell phone number and said, oh boy, I said nobody could do what you guys did. I'm sorry. I need you guys to fly up here first class. I want to spend a day with you. I got to hear what the hell you guys did to me. I said, well, it's not just two of us. We got a promoter that you're going to pay for too. Tom Painter's Bob's life friend promoter. I said, the three of us, and we'll go. Now, the only mistake we should have, if I knew that he was going to be the richest guy in the world, I would have brought the whole damn cameras. And we didn't get pictures because we're just cocky and full of ourselves. And we were just so happy that Bezos thought we were the smartest guys ever on the planet.
Well, you've certainly given Amazon.com a lot of business over the years with your whole catalog for sale up there. What did you most enjoy about writing How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life with a legendary Art Linkletter?
Art and I have traveled everywhere talking around the world together. And my mother grew up thinking she loved, other than my dad, she totally loved Dad, but Art Linkletter and Arthur Godfrey. Linkletter, did, kids say the darndest things, people are funny in House Party. And it turns out, just as a quick aside, Crystal's daddy was best friends with Art Linkletter and won the biggest case ever against 7-Eleven, Ubeline. And the two of them opened up and owned all the Kentucky Fried Chicken in Mexico. I didn't know that when I married Crystal, that, you know, it was later. And Art and I are talking, and Art would always watch these shows, and they'd call up, and because there aren't many people you can argue comprehensively with on a lot of subjects. And Art would like Sunday night he said, this is our time, boy. And you and I and Crystal are going to argue. That's all I want to do is argue with you. Like, okay. But he was funny about his arguments. You know, he'd make jokes, and then he'd say, well, what do you think about that, Mark? And, you know, he wanted me to really have an opinion. And it was just great. It was sort of like back to John Reinhardt. I'd been seasoned in debate and debate winner, so I was good at it. And I could take the other position, but 99% of the time, Art knew I'd be on his side saying, you're correct. So we decided to do the book, and the publishers all said at the front end, Art's too old. He's 96 years old. He's not going to live. So all of a sudden, I meet with the guy that runs Thomas Nelson, and he has invited me to dinner. He's an immigrant from Lebanon. And he said, you know, I do Bob Schuler's books. And he said, he points at me and he says, I'm doing your and Art's book, Mark, and you're not going to take it to anyone else. I said, well, that's going to cost you $250,000. He said, well, I'll do the check tomorrow if you can guarantee Art will do it with you. I said, it's not a guarantee. It's done. Art and I are going to do it. Just send us a contract. We'll do it. I can talk for Art on this one. So we did it, and we had more fun doing it. I mean, because what we get to interview, I'm good at, he wanted, one of the big chapters is, do people have sex at 100? And so we were doing all the top gerontologists in the world, and Art was just excited. And then when we're out selling the book, we sold so many because, do you know the name of the thing called the Villages down in Orlando, Florida? To get in, you got to be over 55. The littlest, cheapest house you can buy is $500,000 up to $50 million. There's 500,000 rich people, and the number one problem is alcoholism. The number two problem is transmittable sex diseases. And Art and I had 10,000 people a night show up, and it was sold out every night. And everybody, I mean, we sold 10,000 books a night out of 10,000. The trouble is, it's just like when we were in New York, I'll do that second, but they all wanted to hug Art, and he's fragile. You know, I tried to get him to do good nutrition. My wife's got a degree in nutrition and is brilliant at that. And I'm 73 and solid as a rock and exercise every day. But Art was our champion swimmer in 1924. Did you know that? Our Olympic swimmer, he won.
Did not.
Oh, he said, every girl I saved down in San Diego University, remember, nobody went to university in 1924, so he was a rare case. He said, every girl I saved needed artificial mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, every one of them. I mean, he was teasing, but it was just so cool. So we wrote the book, and we're in New York selling it the day that Google bought YouTube, and he knocks at my door. Now, he'd been swimming at 5 o'clock because he didn't sleep at 4 hours a night, and I like 6 hours personally. And he bangs on my door, and he's standing there dripping wet still underneath the bathrobe. And he says, did you read this yet? And I'm waking up. Because I flew in from California. He'd flown in a day earlier because he needed to do something else in New York, and he was more rested than I was. And I said, what are we arguing about? $1.2 billion to something called YouTube? He says, nothing's worth that. I said, well, it is. Look, worth is what somebody will pay for it, so it's obviously worth it. He couldn't see it coming. And now, as you know, we're big YouTubers. I mean, you ought to say that. If you want to sell books, you got to be on YouTube, and you got to we do videos almost every day, and we got about 20 or 30 in the hopper in our inside company that's fixing up. So not all of them are up. I mean, and I have made my goal with YouTube to do 6,000 in the next 2 years. So, because there's a lot of stuff I have to share and say, and that I think needs to be said that nobody's willing to say.
You've inspired so many millions of people with the stories you share in your books, but you've equally focused on motivating millions more to tell their stories on the page via bestsellers like You Have a Book in You, Making Money with Your Story, and Speed Write Your Life Story, From Blank Spaces to Great Pages in Just 90 Days, which you co-wrote with Steve Gottry. Please share a few tricks in the trade here on how you can actually guarantee those results.
You got to start with the title, because you want to drive everything towards the title, and you want killer titles. And the other 6 books I'll finish yet this year have all got killer titles, I think. I mean, and I checked the title out. Is this the title you'd like to buy? I mean, if you're going to speed write your autobiography, you don't want to take 10 years. You haven't got 10 years. You may die tomorrow, so you ought to have a leg up on the damn thing. So number one, you got to have a great title. Number two is you do interviews, because interviews are the fastest way to do it. Even if you're doing an autobiography, you interview all the other people. And the guy whose autobiography I like the best is Call Me Ted Turner. And he did 2 pages, and then he did pages of the people that hated him. Like he did Jack Walsh, the guy that bought 200 companies a year for GE, came and tried to buy him. And he went word for word of how they swore at each other. That's not enough money for CN. And it just, you go, the reality of it, what you were saying earlier, the juice, the zeitgeist of it is just really good. And then I think you got to decide that, whether you're going to do big books or small books. And right now, I think the marketplace is going to be for small books. And they're not called mini books by my friend Joel Osteen, just because people need to say, this is going to be just a little chunk of time, 3 hours, 5 hours, 2 days, whatever, if you're a slow reader, a week. But it's not going to be War and Peace. It's going to take you 7 lifetimes to read. Not that I don't think War and Peace is a great book. I'm not besmirching it. So, that's the kind of stuff. And then, the next thing is master yourself, asking questions to yourself. And our book does that, and ask others, and then ask God what you're supposed to say every day. Because Crystal and I do a prayer and meditation 1 hour every morning before we start, to make sure we're in alignment with our highest and best and our divine self. Because I think conscious goes subconscious out to superconscious up to God. You might have a different model, and maybe no model at all, but that's the model I believe. And I think, God can write through you really exquisitely well.
You and your wife, Crystal, recently collaborated on the co-creation of Ask, the bridge from your dreams to destiny, which I see puts a big smile on your face. What most excited you about writing this project together?
I was doing a seminar called Author 101. I'd been divorced a long time and found out she was divorced. And I'm up in the VIP room, and I'm thronged with people, but she's on the other side. Some woman, I'm told that I should have paid for that, but she spilled red wine. My wife wasn't drinking at all over her white pants. And I immediately broke I parted the Red Sea, so to speak. I'd never said that before. There's a cool metaphor. And I said, I think I know where the club soda is. Let me take you to it. Long story short, I invite her out to dinner. And I said, boy, you've seen what Crystal looks like. So you see that she's been a top model in the movie, all that stuff, and top a lot of things. So I said, I can't eat here on this property because there's 1,000 people here or more here that want 2 minutes of my time, and we won't get to be, and it's already 9:30. So we go out to the #1 restaurant in Hollywood, and there's like 50 people, and I go, oh yeah, $100 bill isn't going to get through this. So I thought, well, we'll just chance it. Now remember, I knew how to ask for a long time. We're going to go to that in a second. So we walk up to the gatekeeper, so to speak, and he sees my wife, and he thinks, oh my God, she's a movie star, but I'm not recognizing her. So he says, okay, I give up. Who is she? That's his question. I go, oh boy, this is good. This is good. Mentally, I'm going, I said, you don't recognize her? Now his mind's on steroids, right? Because questions are always the answer. And I learned that from Bucky and everybody else. So he said, no, I don't. And now I'm goofing. Both of us are Danish. I said, well, she's the Queen of Denmark. He starts by saying, no, she's not. I says, oh my God, she is. Who are you? I said, who travels with the Queen? He said, you're the king. Hold on. And we had to table that fast. Well, that started the relationship, and we talked. We found out that we were totally interested in each other, and she had promised her kids she was going to be with them all summer after divorce and all that, but didn't want to start dating, didn't even want to date. But we had telephone powwows every day, so it was pretty amazing. And then, so since then, we've traveled to 80 countries, talked to 7 million people around the world, giant audiences, and met all these great people. They're talented, they're lovely, they're educated, they're personable. But the difference between those who succeed a little, Jake, and those who are vastly successful is one thing only: to ask. And so we came up with the line, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you ask for. And we decided we'd write the book first. Did asking get us out of our problems? And like I told you, asking got me from sleeping in a sleeping bag in front of another guy's room to going to ask my roommates, to asking Chip Collins to help, to asking for talks, and doing more talks than anybody, I guess, at least for a while. I'm not saying I did the most ever, but I've done 7,000 paid talks, so that's pretty many, I guess. I have no idea. Somebody has bigger audiences, more numbers, whatever. Good for them. And I would love to know those numbers, but I'm going to stay around longer, so I'll keep doing it. I don't plan on stopping. And the talks are coming back like crazy. Like last week, we talked to 4,000 people in Tulsa, and today we got 2 invitations to great stuff. So it's the world's opening up again. I'm so thankful, because I don't like a closed down COVID confined, when all you got to do is take ivermectin and get well. And they're lying about that pretty much. Anyhow, so Crystal, I said, and she solved all of her problems of being, she was a superstar in a high school accelerator program, graduates at 17, falls in love with this guy 5 years older than her, gets married. She got a baby on her hip, comes here to Arizona, and has no money, no family, nothing, and no husband, and says, how am I going to make it? And she said, I read that thing about Kelly girls, and she goes there, and then she ends up with 3 Kelly girl things. And then somebody says, well, you're so beautiful. Why don't you try modeling? And she goes to the biggest agency, Ford, and they say, well, first read these lines. And she stumbled through lines. I don't think she stumbled through anything ever, but that's what she says. And then they said, can you walk a runway? Well, hell, she was a ballerina as a kid and a top dancer and singer. So she did it, and they're blown away. And so she did all these commercials. Well, you do all the commercials, you got to join SAG, Screen Actors Guild. And now suddenly she's got the best insurance for her and her little boy. Well, somebody says, you are so good at selling. You've stood here for a week selling more than we've ever sold for. Why don't you try selling real estate? So she goes to real estate school, ends up a year and a half later, from the time she had no money, no contacts, couldn't afford to pay the rent, was getting eviction notices. Now she's the #1 real estate person here in the Valley at the #1 company. And, from there on, her life went really well until she met me. Then again, downhill again.
In terms of collaborating on Ask, what did you most enjoy about co-writing the book together?
Well, like I said, we get up. What had happened is, fortuitously, we were falling in love. We're over at Mother's Market eating dinner, a green meal. And this man of the cloth is 92 next to us with a white collar and all that. So I can't help seeing how in love you guys are. Do you mind my telling you what keeps marriages together forever? Didn't really want him interrupting, but I said, yeah, sure, tell me. He said, well, I'm head of Billy Graham Ministries for the last 70 years. I'm 92. And we found only one thing works. And I said, back to questions. I got to ask him, okay, so what's that? He said, you pray together out loud every day. And Crystal and I had both been to church. We'd prayed, family, you'd pray, but you don't pray in front of your spouse. But we said, look, if that's what it takes, we'll do it twice a day, pray every morning. We start the day, and we never go to sleep without praying out loud with each other. So, and then we pray for exactly what we're thankful for and what we're going to go do, and what we want to accomplish, and everything from writing the book to selling the books to marketing the books to getting the right publisher to, because we have a major Hollywood guy who has to go unnamed yet because we haven't signed a contract, want to do the Fable of Michaela. Did you read Ask by chance?
I have gotten through a lot of it. Yeah, I have.
Did you read the first prologue, the Fable of Michaela?
Yeah, that's very cool that you opened with that too.
Well, remember, I told you I want to do unique and transformational. And we have people call us, say, I've read 3 times, I read to my kids, I read to my wife. I cried, and I'm a man. I don't cry when I read books, even yours, Mark. So, but, it's really cool. So I think it'll be a big movie. And that's why I think I really believe the Chicken Soup, remember, I won't do things I can't series. So we got some series in it I think it will exceed anything I've done in Chicken Soup. And this time we won't sell it. We'll just keep it. We're just going to keep it. I mean, I don't think anyone would offer enough to ever want to. I mean, we're with a major house publisher, and I'll just do him real quick. So Anthony calls us up and says, I got COVID, and it was coming out April 28th. He said, push the book back. I said, no, Anthony, no, we don't do that. I go over, under, around, or through obstacles. I believe they're there to make us grow. So I am not pushing it back to the politician, the presidential campaign. That would kill me. We've worked 2 years to get here. So anyhow, we did it. It started selling, and then we've done, whatever I give you is the wrong number. I think 146 podcasts and TV and radio shows, and got a lot more planned. And so we sold, as of about 2 weeks ago, we came #1, sold more than anything. And then we did the talk with 4,000, and we did one radio show in Chicago with 10 million people in the Midwest. And I called Anthony. I said, man, they're calling me, and our book price has gone to Amazon, $38 a book. I said, you know, it's a $17 book. We can't, this isn't okay. And this is on a Saturday morning. I said, so what are you going to do? He said, well, you have to, go in POD, print on demand, paperback, printed right there at Ingram. And I said, yeah, well, what will that mean? He said, you're going to compete with yourself. You're going to have a hardbound and a softbound at the same time. And no one's ever done that before. I said, well, tell me how long it's going to take to get the books printed. 8 weeks, because we're back ordered. Everything is in the supply chain screwed up right now because of COVID. I said, I looked at my wife. She goes, yeah, we're going paperback. So we're competing with ourselves, and they're both selling it. I mean, if you told me that could happen, I would tell you, no, I want to stay in hardbound for a year, 2 years, because that's traditional, and then go to paper. But right now we're doing both, and we're going to have them out in hardbound again, which I think is I really love the ask, The Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. It has one of the more miraculous covers I've ever seen. And people say, I bought it just because of the cover. I said, well, if you read it, it'll cover you with some insights, illumination, solutions, awareness, and breakthroughs that you couldn't imagine that you could have.
Your brand's been around for decades, long enough you have your own university now and a wide sphere of influence with the Mega Seminar Series, your aforementioned Mega Book Marketing University, and building your Mega Speaking Empire. What were your ambitions with these resources when you first started them up?
So what I want to do, because I'm going to live long enough, is I want to help 100% of humanity be physically and economically successful. And obviously I own an energy device company called Natural Power Concepts. We have the pop-up windmills. We got 248 different patented inventions that are going to change the world. And I'm proud of that. But from book business, what I want to do is get the 4 billion people that literally can't read, like my parents. And so I understand it at a heart level and a soul level and a lack of freedom level. So my line is that reading is the ultimate freedom of freedoms. And if you can't read, you're not free. Because a person, Jim Rohn said, if you can read and can't, you're no better than somebody who can't. But if you can't read and can't have a way to learn to read, you're incarcerated in poverty. And there's no reason for poverty. And in a world that has absolute complete abundance, that Big G took care of us, Big God took care of us in every good way. So I want everyone to be able to really read. And now I love Elon Musk, and he has just given $100 million to Dr. Peter Diamandis, this guy of Singularity University, who I think the world of, who wrote Abundance and a bunch of other books now. And Peter, they went to Tanzania, and in 1 month with cell phones, they taught everyone to read. They took the totally illiterate people that had no electricity and taught them to read. So I don't know how I'm going to participate in that, because I just saw it last night for the first time that they're releasing the information. So, and by the way, I don't care if I don't participate in it, and I don't care if they don't read my books. I want everyone to read books, and if they want to read mine too, great. But wouldn't it be nice to have half the world's population? There's 8 billion of us right now. That's 8 billion. So it'd be nice. That's 8. It'd be nice if we get everybody to read and learn and grow and be free, because I'm capitalistic. I believe in democracy. I believe that communism, socialism, terror, and tyranny is a dysfunctional behavior. People can make good choices once they have enough information. So that's what I want to do at that level. I do have, like if you ever come to the seminar, I show my 10 goals for 100 years, because everybody ought to have 100-year worth of goals. You live as long as you've got stuff to do.
In closing, when you stop for a moment to reflect back on your record-setting literary career, reaching 500 million readers and counting, what are your proudest accomplishments?
As for accomplishing, I love every one of the accomplishments of 59 #1 bestsellers on New York Times. And by the way, that people say, well, that's all out of 312 books. I got a lot of books in foreign countries that are #1, but you'll never hear about them. And so I'm fine with that. And I love all the Guinness Book of Records. And I think I got 2 or 3 more. And I think my wife's they've asked her if this is the longest prologue. Unless anyone else comes up with a longer prologue than her, she'll get her first Guinness Book record. And that's like way cool and fun for me to see happen. And I got grandkids that are just precocious. Like in the beginning, I asked, we had the story about Everett, but Everett is a little genius, and he asked to write the book with us, so we obviously put him in. But this kid at 6 years old is a superstar jock, but he gets up at 5, studies Spanish and Chinese, and just has already been to China with us. But his gym coach had him memorize every bodily part physiologically and anatomically. And I'm at an Easter with the top head of innovation at Mayo Clinic, and the guy says, I want this kid to come over here and tell all my 20 top innovative doctors. And I said, I can't use his name because he was trying to stay invisible, although he's got like a 200 IQ, this MD. And I said, yeah. So every doctor said, I can't do what Everett does. I don't know every physiological body part. And at 6 years old, he knows it. Said, we want him to go to med school. And I said, look, I love him and I love you, but ain't going to happen. I said, I know all the jocks that were Olympic jocks and they didn't have a life, and they're friends of mine. And you'd know the names if I said them, but I better not do that because I'll get in trouble. But they don't have a life. And, you work 18 hours a day. And I said, could he graduate at 12 years old from Mayo and ASU Med? The answer is, yeah, I think he's smart enough to pull it off. But the answer is no, Grandpa. And I had his dad there, our son. And I said, what do you think, son? And he said, no, Dad, I think you're right. Don't let this happen.
But think of all the things that have happened because of your books. That's got to make you feel really good, I would imagine.
Oh, I feel enormously good, and I'm thankful. And almost daily, somebody else comes back with something that they've pulled off. Like with 1 Minute Millionaire, I go on a podcast in Europe, the biggest one, Rob Moore, and he says, this is just amazing. I made $30 million for you. And then I was on the podcast with the Amazon bestseller list with Mark Devereaux. I expect you know Mark. And Mark says, you're the Roger Bannister of reading. And I said, do you know what Roger Bannister did? He said, yeah, ran the 4 minute mile. I said, yeah, but the next week, 119 people did it because he did it. And to this group, why that's important is the minute the threshold's broken, you're no smarter physiologically than you were the day before, but you've transformed the belief system, transformed the idea. And so Mark said, well, Mark, what are you saying? I said, well, look, 2 years ago, we didn't have $1 trillion company, and today we got 5. And I'm telling you, we're going to have 50 in the next year because we've set a new benchmark. And I've set a new benchmark with 500 million books, but my benchmark's really 1 billion. And even if I didn't do it, enough people are listening to me, and plenty are saying it's not doable. He can't outsell the Bible. And I don't know if you know, do you know I did a Chicken Soup with the Soul Bible? I went to another publisher in Nashville, which we've talked about, and we did Chicken Soup with the Soul Bible, and we sold 70,000 a week at Walmart. And we did little stories getting the big story. But I said, we're sitting with a guy who fell in love with me, and I fell in love with him. And I said, here's the trouble. It's black, and it scares people because of the gold or silver leaf. So let's do it in white, and let's do it as tan insides, and let's do little stories to get you into every one of the big stories. And the guy said, could you put it together? I said, yeah. And so they called it the ultimate chicken soup, because it's God's insight. And we got a lot of people to read it that wouldn't ever read the Bible. Charles Jones said, you may be the only Bible people ever listen to, Mark.
Mark Victor Hansen, thank you so much again. It's been a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We really, really are grateful for you taking out time to be on About the Authors TV.
Bye-bye.